I didn't scream when the trigger was pulled. Screams are for people who still have hope, and my hope died the second the man in the silk suit smiled at me. I just watched, paralyzed by three men twice my size, as the only good thing I ever brought into this world was erased on a dirty warehouse floor. They thought they were breaking a helpless father. They didn't know they were waking up a dormant war machine. Call to action. Like the video, subscribe for more betrayal twists, and comment where you're watching from, your city or your country. The rain in this city never washes anything clean. It just makes the grime slicker, harder to hold on to. I was on my knees on the cold concrete, the wet dampness soaking through my jeans, mixing with the iron smell of blood that was slowly pooling toward my boots. "Look at him, Mason," the man said. His name was Victor. He was a small man, the kind who bought power because he couldn't earn respect. He wore a suit that cost more than my house, but he wore it like a costume. "I told you to pay the tax. You wanted to play hero. Now you watch." My son, Evan, was on the ground 5 feet away from me. He was only 19. He had my chin, his mother's eyes, and a heart that was too soft for a world this sharp. He looked at me, his eyes wide, terrified, pleading. He wasn't a soldier. I had spent my life training men to be steel, to turn off their fear, to become weapons for the Navy. But I never trained Evan. I wanted him to be soft. I wanted him to be safe. That was my first mistake. "Dad," Evan whispered. It was barely a sound, just a breath. "It's okay, son." I choked out, straining against the arms of the two gorillas holding my shoulders back. My joints screamed, the old injuries from active duty flaring up like fire, but I didn't care. "It's going to be okay." Victor laughed. It was a dry, ugly sound. He raised the pistol. It wasn't a tactical weapon. It was flashy, chrome, something a gangster uses to show off. "Say goodbye, Mason." The sound was deafening in the enclosed space of the alleyway. When the echo faded, the world went gray. The sound of rain seemed to stop. The men released me, shoving me face first into the puddle. They laughed as they walked away, Victor stepping carefully over my son's legs so he wouldn't scuff his Italian leather shoes. "Don't forget this feeling, old man," Victor called back over his shoulder. "You tell the police, and I come for your wife next." I crawled. I didn't run. I crawled to him. I pulled Evan into my lap, his body heavy, the warmth already leaving him. I rocked him back and forth, making a sound that wasn't human. It was the sound of an animal that had lost its mate, its cub, its reason for breathing. The police arrived 20 minutes later. They took their time. I sat on the back of the ambulance, a thermal blanket draped over my shoulders, watching the red and blue lights flash against the wet brick walls. A detective named Miller walked over. He was chewing gum, looking at his notebook, not at me. "Rough night, Mason," Miller said. He didn't sound sympathetic. He sounded bored. "Witnesses say it was a drug deal gone bad. Your boy involved in the distribution?" I looked up, my eyes burning. My son was an engineering student. He was walking home from the library. Victor stopped him. Miller stopped chewing. He looked around nervously, then leaned in close. "Careful with names, pal. You don't have proof. And around here, accusations like that get people hurt. Let's just write it down as a robbery, yeah? Unidentified assailant." I stared at him. I saw it then. The laziness in his eyes. The fear. Or maybe it was payroll. Miller wasn't going to help me. The law wasn't going to help me. They let me go home at 4 a.m. Driving back to the house felt like driving a hearse. The steering wheel felt foreign in my hands. Every street lamp I passed looked like a spotlight on my failure. I had trained hundreds of men. I had taught them how to survive in jungles, in deserts, in urban war zones. I had taught them how to hunt human monsters. But when the monster came for my own blood, I was useless. I pulled into the driveway. The house was dark. I walked inside, the silence pressing against my ears. I expected Harper to be at the door. I expected her to be pacing, frantic, waiting for news. I had called her from the ambulance, told her Evan was hurt, told her it was bad. I couldn't say the words dead over the phone. I walked into the living room. Harper was sitting on the couch. She wasn't crying. She was holding a glass of wine, staring at the blank television screen. "Harper," I said, my voice cracking. She looked up. Her face was perfectly made up. No running mascara. No red, puffy eyes. She looked annoyed. "Where is he?" she asked. Her voice was flat. I fell to my knees in front of her, burying my face in her lap. I started to sob, the dam finally breaking. "He's gone, Harper. He's gone. Victor, he killed him." I waited for her hands to touch my hair. I waited for her to scream, to hold me, to share this impossible weight. But her hands didn't move. She sat stiffly. "I told him," she whispered. But she wasn't talking to me. She was muttering to herself. "I told him to stay away from that side of town. He was coming from the library," I said, lifting my head, confused by her tone. "It wasn't his fault." Harper stood up, abruptly pushing me away. She walked to the window, peering out through the blinds as if checking for something. "We have to call the insurance company. And we need to call the funeral home. The expensive one on 5th Street. We have to make sure it looks proper." I stayed on the floor, blinking. "Proper? Harper, our son is dead. Who cares how it looks?" She turned to me, and for a second, I saw something in her eyes that chilled me more than the rain in the alley. It was calculation. "We have to protect our reputation, Mason. People talk. If they think Evan was mixed up with gangs, it reflects on us." "On me?" She took a sip of her wine. "Did you tell the police about Victor?" "Yes," I said, standing up slowly. My legs felt weak. "Of course I did." Harper's glass hit the table with a hard clink. "You idiot," she hissed. "You want to get us killed? You keep your mouth shut. Mason, do you hear me? You handle this with dignity. You don't go starting a war you can't win." "A war?" I stepped closer to her. The smell of her expensive perfume was suffocating. "He murdered our child. And he runs this city," she shouted. "Evan is gone. Nothing brings him back. We have to survive. I have to survive." She brushed past me, heading for the laundry room. "I'm washing your clothes. They smell like the street. Go shower. You look pathetic." I stood there, stunned. Grief affects people differently, I knew that. Some people shut down. Some people get angry. But this was cold. This was practical. I walked down the hallway, heading toward our bedroom, but I stopped when I heard a noise. It was the soft beep of a keypad. I looked toward the laundry room. The door was cracked open just an inch. Harper was standing there, her back to me. She wasn't loading the washing machine. She was holding a phone, but it wasn't her rose gold iPhone. It was a black flip phone, a burner. I held my breath, my training kicking in instinctively. I made myself silent, leaning closer to the gap in the door. "It's done," she whispered into the phone. Her voice was shaking, but not with sadness. With adrenaline. "Mason is home. He's a mess. He won't do anything. No, he saw it. Yeah. Look, I need the transfer by morning. If I'm going to play the grieving mother, I need to know it was worth it." My heart stopped. The blood in my veins turned to ice. "If I'm going to play the grieving mother." She snapped the phone shut and buried it deep in the hamper, under a pile of dirty towels. Then she started the washing machine, the loud hum drowning out the sound of my entire world shattering for the second time that night. I backed away silently. I went into the bathroom and turned on the shower, sitting on the edge of the tub fully clothed. Victor had pulled the trigger. That was a simple, brutal fact. But what I had just heard, that was something else. That was a knife in my back, twisted by the hand that wore my wedding ring. I looked at my hands. They were shaking, not from fear anymore, but from a rage so deep, so quiet. It felt like the calm before a hurricane. Harper thought I was a broken old man. Victor thought I was a helpless father. They forgot who I was before I was a suburban husband. They forgot that for 20 years, my job wasn't to mourn the dead. It was to hunt the monsters who made them that way. I stood up and looked in the mirror. The man looking back at me wasn't Mason the father. He was the commander, and he had a new mission. I didn't sleep. Sleep is a luxury for the innocent, and I wasn't innocent anymore. I was a man living in a house with a stranger. At 3 a.m., The house was silent. I moved to the laundry room, my footsteps soundless on the tile. I dug through the hamper until my fingers brushed against the hard plastic of the burner phone. I flipped it open, the screen glowing a harsh blue in the dark. Enter passcode. Damn it. I tried the year we were married. Error. I tried Evan's birth year. Error. I hesitated. One more wrong try and it might lock permanently. I couldn't risk it. I needed to clone the SIM card, but I didn't have my gear. Not yet. I carefully placed the phone back exactly where I found it, memorizing the angle it lay against the blue towel. If Harper noticed it had moved, I'd lose the advantage. The next 3 days were a blur of black suits and empty condolences. The funeral was held on a Tuesday under a gray, suffocating sky. People I hadn't seen in years mumbled words that meant nothing. Time heals all wounds, they said. I wanted to scream. Time doesn't heal wounds. It just turns them into scars. Harper stood next to me, the picture of tragic grace in her black veil. But I was watching her hands. They weren't trembling with grief. They were clenched with tension. Then I saw him. A man in a sharp charcoal suit stood near the back. Grant. He was a lawyer downtown, the kind who specialized in helping rich crooks hide their dirty money. He wasn't looking at the casket. He was looking at my wife. Harper looked up. Her eyes met Grant's over the open grave of our son. It was quick, a flicker of a glance, but it was there. A nod, a silent communication. As the ceremony ended, Harper didn't wait for me. I'm going to the car. Mason, she said, her voice tight. My head is splitting. Go ahead, I said. I watched her walk away. She didn't go straight to our sedan. She paused near the cemetery gates next to Grant. They didn't touch, but he handed her something, a small white envelope. She slipped it into her purse faster than a magician's trick. I turned back to the dirt covering my boy. I promise you, Evan, I whispered. I'm going to burn it all down. I left the cemetery and drove straight to the police station. I needed to see if the system was just broken or if it was rigged. Detective Miller was at his desk, eating a sandwich that dripped mustard onto a file folder. Mason, he mumbled, not bothering to wipe his mouth. Funeral was today, right? I want to know why Victor hasn't been brought in, I said, leaning my hands on his desk. Miller sighed. Look, we scrubbed the alley. No blood, no cameras. It's your word against a businessman. Besides, he leaned in, his voice dropping. Intel says your son was meeting him. Maybe Evan was the one dealing. I grabbed Miller's collar before I could think, hauling him halfway across the desk. The room went silent. Every cop in the bullpen stood up, hands hovering near their holsters. My son was innocent, I snarled. Miller didn't look scared. He smiled. Touch me again, Mason, and you'll miss the wake. Go home. Forget about Victor. It's safer for your health. I shoved him back. I looked around the room. I saw the eyes of the other officers. Some looked away in shame. I realized then that I wasn't in a police station. I was in another branch of Victor's office. I walked out. I drove aimlessly for an hour, checking my mirrors to ensure I wasn't being followed. I ended up at a self-storage facility on the edge of town. Unit 404. I hadn't opened this rolling metal door in 12 years. Inside lay my past in a large, black Pelican case. I dragged it out and popped the latches. Inside were the tools of a trade I thought I'd left behind. High-end surveillance bugs, a signal jammer, and a laptop with decryption software that was highly illegal for a civilian to own. I took the SIM card cloner out of the kit and drove home. It was evening. Harper was in the shower. I could hear the water running upstairs. I went to the laundry room. The burner phone was still there. I popped the back off, removed the SIM card, and inserted it into the cloner attached to my laptop. Reading data, 100%. Copy complete. I put the SIM back in the phone and returned it to the hamper just as the water turned off. I went to the garage and sat in my car with the laptop, opening the cloned files. Most messages were deleted, but the software recovered the ghost data. I scrolled back to the date of Evan's death. My finger hovered over the trackpad. I wanted to be wrong. I clicked. To unknown number, Trace, Grant_Law, time, for 15 p.m., 1 hour before Evan died. He's leaving the library now, wearing the blue hoodie. He knows about the accounts, Grant. If he talks to Mason, we lose everything. Fix it. From unknown number, consider it handled. Victor is personally seeing to it. But this is going to cost you a premium. 2. Unknown number, just do it. Make it look like an accident. Mason can't know. The letter's blurred. My wife didn't just know. She ordered the hit. My son found out she was laundering money, and instead of facing prison, she traded his life for her freedom. She sent our son to the slaughterhouse. A low, guttural roar of agony escaped my throat. I slammed my fist into the dashboard, cracking the plastic. She was upstairs right now, probably putting on lotion, probably thinking she had won. The urge to run upstairs and strangle her pulsed in my temples like a drumbeat. Kill her. Kill her now. But I stopped myself. I took a deep breath. In through the nose, out through the mouth. If I killed her now, I'd go to jail. Victor would still be free. Grant would still be free. Evan deserved justice, not just rage. I wiped the tears from my face. I hardened my heart until it felt like a stone in my chest. I walked back into the house. Harper was in the kitchen, pouring wine. "Where were you?" she asked. "Just driving," I said, my voice terrifyingly calm. Clearing my head. "Well, try to be present, Mason," she said, sipping her drink. "We have to meet with the estate lawyer tomorrow. We need to move forward." "I know," I said. I walked over and kissed her on the cheek. Her skin felt cold to my lips. "We need to move forward." I walked away, heading to the basement. "Where are you going?" she called out. "To fix the furnace," I lied. "It's making a noise." I went downstairs into the dark. I wasn't fixing the furnace. I was preparing the hunting ground. I spent the next 2 nights turning the house I built with my own hands into a trap. While Harper slept, sedated by expensive wine and a clear conscience, I moved through the rooms like a shadow. I wasn't the husband checking the locks anymore. I was an operative securing a hostile environment. I unscrewed the ventilation grate in the master bedroom. I placed a microtransmitter inside the ductwork, securing it with a magnetic clip. It was the size of a dime, impossible to see unless you knew exactly where to look. I did the same in the living room, hiding one behind the mounted flat-screen TV and another in the kitchen, taped under the marble island where Harper liked to take her morning calls. I routed the audio feed to a secure server on my laptop, which I kept locked in a fireproof safe in the garage. I told Harper the safe was for Evan's keepsakes, knowing she wouldn't touch anything that reminded her of the son she murdered. By Thursday, I was live. I sat in the garage, wearing headphones, listening to the amplified sounds of my own home. I heard the coffee maker gurgling. I heard Harper's heels clicking on the hardwood. Then, her phone rang. "Grant," she answered. Her voice was different when she spoke to him. Softer, almost girlish. It made my stomach turn. "Is it done?" she asked, pacing near the kitchen island. I could hear the rustle of her silk robe through the microphone. "Mason is managed," she continued. "He's a ghost. He just sits in the backyard staring at the fence. I think he's broken. When can we access the account?" "No, Grant, I can't wait a month. I want to list the house as soon as the insurance clears. I want out of this city." I closed my eyes, pressing the headphones tighter against my ears. She was planning to sell our home, the home where Evan took his first steps. She wanted to erase us. "Tonight?" she whispered. "Okay, come over after 10. He takes sleeping pills. He won't wake up." I didn't take sleeping pills. I flushed them down the toilet every night and replaced them with vitamin supplements. Just in case, she checked the bottle. I took the headphones off. I had enough intel on the home front. I knew the enemy was coming to me later. But first, I had to hunt the general. I left the house at noon, telling Harper I was going to a grief support group. "That's good for you, Mason," she said, not looking up from her tablet. "Take your time." I didn't go to a support group. I drove to the industrial district, swapping my car for a beat-up sedan I'd rented under a fake name 2 towns over. I parked 3 blocks away from the Varnish, a high-end lounge that served as Victor's headquarters during the day. I waited. Patience is the weapon most men forget to load. At 1:15 p.m., the back door opened. 2 large men stepped out first, security. They scanned the alley. Then Victor stepped out. He looked different in the daylight. Less like a monster, more like a corrupt politician. He was laughing, lighting a cigar. And walking right next to him was Detective Miller. My knuckles cracked as I gripped the steering wheel. Miller was holding a thick manila envelope. The payoff. They weren't even hiding it. They felt untouchable. I started the car and followed them. They didn't go far. They drove to a construction site on the waterfront, a massive luxury condo development. I knew the project. It was stalled in court. I parked the sedan behind a dumpster and moved on foot. I scaled a chain-link fence, moving through the skeletal structure of the unfinished building. I climbed to the second floor, looking down into the central courtyard where Victor and Miller stood. I pulled out the directional microphone from my jacket. I aimed the dish at them. The sound cut through the wind and hit my earpiece crystal clear. Kid was a liability, Miller, Victor was saying, blowing smoke into the air. But the mother, she's cold. Colder than me. She wanted a guarantee that the boy wouldn't talk to the feds about the laundering. Miller laughed nervously. Yeah, well, Mason is the loose end now. He came to the station. He's got that look in his eyes. The 1,000-yard stare. He's a retired mechanic, isn't he? Victor asked, dismissive. Ex-Navy, Miller corrected. Did some contracting work back in the day. Victor waved his hand. He's a nobody. If he gets loud, we put him in the ground next to his kid. But keep him alive for now. Harper needs him to sign off on the life insurance policy. It's a double indemnity clause. Big payout. I lowered the microphone. They weren't just killing my son. They were farming us. They were harvesting my family for profit. I watched Victor get back into his armored SUV. I memorized the license plate. I memorized the faces of his guards. I saw the bulge of weapons under their jackets. They were sloppy. They relied on intimidation, not skill. I could have taken a shot right there. I had a clear line of sight. A loose brick dropped from this height would have ended Victor's miserable life. But death was too easy. Death was an escape. I wanted to destroy his world first. I wanted him to lose his money, his power, his reputation, and his freedom. I wanted him to feel exactly how I felt in that alley, helpless. I slipped back into the shadows and returned to my car. When I got home, it was 9:45 p.m. I walked in the front door, looking exhausted. Harper was in the living room, lighting candles. She was wearing a red dress, one I hadn't seen in years. It was low cut. She looked beautiful, which made her look even more hideous to me. How was the group? She asked, her voice thick with fake sympathy. Helpful, I mumbled. They said I need to sleep. I'm going to take a double dose tonight. Good, she said, hiding a smile. You need your rest. I walked to the bedroom, changed into my pajamas, and made a show of swallowing the pills in the bathroom with the door open. I turned off the lights and got into bed. I lay there for 20 minutes, controlling my breathing, waiting. At 10:15 p.m., the doorbell rang. I heard Harper's quick footsteps. The door opened. A low murmur of voices. Then, the sound of a kiss. A wet, sickening sound. Is he out? Grant's voice. Arrogant. Like a light, Harper whispered. Come to the kitchen. I opened the good scotch. I opened my eyes in the dark. I wasn't going to confront them. Not yet. Tonight was about gathering ammunition. I slid out of bed. I didn't go to the door. I went to the window. I climbed out onto the roof of the porch, a route I used to take when I forgot my keys, and lowered myself silently into the backyard. I crept around the side of the house to the kitchen window. The blinds were drawn, but they weren't shut tight. There was a 1-inch gap. I peered inside. Grant was sitting at my table, drinking from my glass. Harper was sitting on his lap, her arms around his neck. The police chief is on board, Grant said, running his hand down her back. Victor paid him off this morning. The investigation into Evan is officially closed as of tomorrow. Ruled a robbery gone wrong. Harper sighed. resting her head on his shoulder. Thank God. I was so worried Evan left a digital trail. He did, Grant laughed. But we wiped his laptop before Mason even got home from the hospital. I froze. Evan's laptop. I thought the police had taken it as evidence. They hadn't. Harper had taken it. Where is it now? Harper asked. In Victor's personal safe, Grant said. Insurance. Just in case you ever decide to grow a conscience and turn on us. I won't, she said, kissing him again. I just want the money, Grant. I want to live in Paris. I had heard enough. I dropped down from the window ledge, landing softly in the grass. I knew where the evidence was. Victor's safe. And I knew that my wife was planning to leave the country on the blood money of our only child. I went back to the garage. I didn't go back to bed. I opened the Pelican case again. I took out a small, black device. A GPS tracker. I walked down the driveway to where Grant's luxury sedan was parked. I slid underneath the rear bumper and magnetized the tracker to the chassis. When Grant left tonight, I would know exactly where he went, and he would lead me straight to the heart of the beast. I wasn't a grieving father anymore. I was a hunter, and the season had just opened. The GPS that on my laptop screen moved steadily east, blinking red against the grid of the city map. Grant was heading home, or so I thought, but he didn't turn toward the suburbs. He turned toward the industrial district. He was going to Victor. I sat in the dark of my garage, the blue light of the screen illuminating the anger etched into my face. It was 2 a.m. Harper was asleep upstairs, probably dreaming of Paris and expensive wine. I was wide awake, fueled by a cocktail of adrenaline and hate. I watched the dot stop at a warehouse complex on the waterfront, the same complex where my son died. It was bold, stupidly bold. They were meeting at the scene of the crime. I couldn't storm the place. One man against an army of street soldiers was suicide, even with my training. I needed to be smarter. I needed to be a ghost. I spent the next 3 days dismantling Victor's operations without firing a single shot. I started with his supply chain. Through the hacked police audio I'd set up on my scanner, I learned about a shipment coming in on Friday night. High-end electronics, they called it. Code for stolen goods and untraceable cash. I didn't call the local police. They were compromised. I called the State Highway Patrol, using a voice modulator to tip them off anonymously about a reckless driver in a commercial truck, giving them the exact license plate and route of Victor's delivery. I watched from a safe distance on a highway overpass as 4 state troopers pulled the truck over. The driver, panicked and stupid, tried to run. They found the cash hidden in the wheel wells. That night, listening to the bug in my kitchen, I heard Grant on the phone, his voice pitching high with stress. Victor is furious. Harper. That was $500,000 in liquidity. Gone. The state cops have it. How did they know? Harper asked, sounding frightened for the first time. Bad luck, Grant said. Just bad luck. I smiled in the darkness. It wasn't luck. It was surgery. The next day, I went after the money laundering. I knew Harper was cooking the books for Victor's shell companies. I had access to her laptop now. I'd installed a keylogger while she was in the shower. I watched her passwords, her accounts, her routing numbers. I didn't steal the money. That would raise alarms too fast. Instead, I introduced a glitch. I wrote a simple script that randomly diverted 2% of every transaction into a frozen escrow account that looked like an IRS hold. It was small enough to be missed at first, but big enough to cause chaos when the totals didn't match. By Sunday, Victor was paranoid. I tailed him to a meeting at a diner. He was screaming at his accountant, a sweaty little man who looked like he was about to faint. Where is the leak? Victor slammed his hand on the table. Money doesn't just evaporate. I don't know, boss, the accountant stammered. It looks like a federal audit trigger. The system is freezing the assets automatically. Fix it, Victor roared. Or I fix you. I sat 3 booths away, wearing a baseball cap and reading a newspaper, drinking black coffee. I was invisible to them. Just another old man in a diner. Victor looked around the room, his eyes wild. He was starting to feel the pressure. He was looking for enemies in the shadows, blaming his own men, blaming the government. He never suspected the grieving father washing his car on weekends. Meanwhile, at home, I played the part perfectly. I stopped showering every day. I let my beard grow out, patchy and gray. I walked with a slump. I left empty whiskey bottles on the counter, poured down the sink, not drunk. Harper bought it hook, line, and sinker. "You're a mess, Mason," she said one evening, stepping over a pile of laundry I'd intentionally left on the floor. "You need to pull yourself together. It's embarrassing." "I miss him, Harper," I slurred, pretending to be half drunk. "I just miss him." She rolled her eyes. "We all miss him. But life goes on. Sign these." She shoved a stack of papers in front of me. Insurance forms. The final payout for Evan's death. I looked at the papers. The pen felt like a grenade in my hand. If I signed, she got the money. If I refused, she'd get suspicious. I signed. But I signed messily, my hand shaking. "There." She snatched the papers away. "Finally. Now go to bed. Grant is coming over to discuss the legal details." "Okay." I mumbled, stumbling toward the hallway. I didn't go to bed. I went to my surveillance post in the garage. Grant arrived 10 minutes later. He didn't look as sharp as he did at the funeral. His tie was loose. He looked tired. "Victor is losing it," Grant said, pacing the kitchen. I watched the audio waveform spike on my screen. "He thinks there's a rat in the crew. He beat up one of his own drivers today because of the truck bust." "But the money is safe?" Harper asked, pouring him a drink. "The insurance check?" "Yeah, once the transfer clears, we're good. But we need to be careful, Harper. Victor is talking about cleaning house. He thinks someone is talking to the feds." "Who?" Harper asked. "Anyone," Grant said. "He's seeing ghosts." I leaned back in my chair, a cold satisfaction settling in my chest. I am the ghost, I thought. But I needed more than chaos. I needed a confession. I needed something that would put them away for life. Something that even a corrupt police chief couldn't bury. I needed to separate Grant from Victor. The next morning, I made my move. I waited until Grant left his office for lunch. I followed him to the parking garage. He drove a flashy Porsche, bought with blood money, no doubt. I didn't confront him. I simply left a note on his windshield. It was printed on plain paper, no fingerprints. It read, "Victor knows you're skimming off the top. He's coming for you tonight." It was a lie. Grant wasn't skimming. But a man like Grant, a man with no loyalty, would instantly believe it. He knew there was missing money, my glitch. He knew Victor was paranoid. It was the perfect wedge. I watched from my car as Grant returned. He picked up the note. He read it. His face went pale. He looked around the garage, terrified. He pulled out his phone, his hands shaking. He didn't call Victor. He called Harper. "We have a problem," he whispered into the phone. "I think Victor is going to turn on me." "What?" Harper's voice was shrill. "Why?" "I don't know. Maybe he's using me as a scapegoat for the missing cash. Harper, if he comes for me, I'm not going down alone. I'll tell them everything. I'll tell them about Evan." "You shut up," Harper hissed. "Don't you dare panic. Meet me tonight. The old shipyard. We need to figure this out." "Okay," Grant said. "Midnight. I'm bringing a gun." I lowered my binoculars. The old shipyard. It was the perfect kill box. Isolated. Dark. No witnesses. They were going to meet to turn on each other. And I was going to be the judge, jury, and executioner. I drove home and walked straight to the Pelican case. I took out the tactical vest. I took out the zip ties. I took out the tranquilizer pistol, a relic from a covert op years ago, designed to take down guard dogs silently. Tonight, I wasn't hunting dogs. I was hunting wolves. And the sheep's clothing I'd been wearing for weeks was about to come off. Midnight at the shipyard was darker than the inside of a grave. The fog rolled off the water, thick and smelling of salt and rust. It was the kind of night where secrets went to die. I was already there, positioned high up on a rusty crane boom, looking down at the meeting spot. I wore matte black gear, face painted, breathing slow and shallow. My heart rate was 55 beats per minute. Calm. Cold. Grant's Porsche arrived first. He parked under the yellow glow of a single flickering floodlight. He stepped out, looking like a nervous wreck. He kept checking his watch, his hand hovering near the pocket where I knew he had a gun. 10 minutes later, Harper's sedan pulled up. She got out, wrapping her coat tight against the chill. She didn't look like my wife anymore. She looked like a stranger, hard, angular, dangerous. "You're late," Grant snapped, his voice echoing slightly in the empty yard. "I had to make sure Mason was asleep," she hissed back. "Did you bring it?" "Bring what?" Grant asked, confused. "The ledger, you idiot. The physical copy." Harper stepped closer to him. "If Victor is coming for you, we need leverage. We need the book that proves he's paying off the cops." Grant laughed, a frantic, high-pitched sound. "I didn't bring the ledger, Harper. I thought we were running. I thought we were leaving tonight." "We can't leave without the insurance money," she screamed, losing her composure. "It clears tomorrow. We just need to survive tonight." I watched them bicker, two rats trapped in a sinking ship. But something was wrong. Victor wasn't here. I had set the bait for Grant to panic, but I expected him to inadvertently lead Victor here too. Then, headlights cut through the fog. Not one car. 3 black SUVs, moving in a tactical column. They boxed in Grant and Harper's cars instantly. Doors flew open. 6 men jumped out, weapons drawn. It wasn't the police. It was Victor. Well, Victor's voice boomed as he stepped out of the lead vehicle. He was clapping slowly. "The lovebirds are having a quarrel." Grant froze. "Victor, boss. I can explain." "Explain what?" Victor walked into the circle of light. "Explain why my accounts are frozen? Explain why the state police hit my truck? Or explain why I found a tracker on your car, Grant?" My eyes widened. He found the tracker. I had underestimated his security team. They must have swept Grant's car. I didn't. Grant stammered, backing away until he hit Harper's car. "And you?" Victor turned to Harper. "The grieving mother. You were supposed to be the smart one. You told me Mason was handled. You told me he was a broken old man." "He is," Harper cried out, stepping away from Grant, trying to save herself. "He knows nothing. He's at home sleeping. This is Grant's fault. He's the one stealing from you." Victor shook his head, looking disappointed. He snapped his fingers. 2 of his men grabbed Grant. He screamed as they dragged him toward the edge of the dock. "Wait!" Grant yelled. "Wait! It wasn't me. It's the boy. It's Evan." Victor signaled for his men to stop. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush bone. "What did you say?" Victor asked softly. "It's Evan." Grant sobbed, falling to his knees. "He wasn't just a student. He made a backup. He told me before the hit. He said if anything happened to him, an email would go out. A dead man switch." I almost fell off the crane. A dead man switch. Evan knew. My son knew he was going to die, and he prepared for it. "Where is it?" Victor demanded, grabbing Grant by the hair. "I don't know." Grant wept. "But that's why the accounts are freezing. That's why the cops were tipped off. It's not a person doing it. It's an automated program. Evan wrote a code to destroy you from the grave." My world tilted on its axis. I wasn't the one freezing the accounts. I wasn't the one who tipped off the state police about the truck. I thought I had done those things. But looking back, the timing was off. The glitch I introduced hadn't activated yet. The tip to the police had been sent before I even made the call. It was Evan. My son was fighting this war from beyond the grave. He was smarter than all of us. He hadn't just found out about the laundering. He had hacked their entire system. He had set up a digital ghost to haunt them if his heart ever stopped beating. Tears blurred my vision in the tactical goggles. I had been so focused on revenge, I hadn't realized my son had already started the justice. "Find the server," Victor roared, shoving Grant away. "If that code keeps running, it will email the FBI next. Find where the boy stored the program. It's probably at the house." Harper shrieked. "In his room. He had a server rack in his closet. Mason wouldn't let me touch it. They were coming to my house. They were going to destroy the last piece of my son, his legacy, his justice. I had to move. Now. I couldn't take them all out here. Not with Harper in the crossfire. I needed her alive for prison, not dead in a dockyard. I slid down the crane cable, hitting the ground silently behind a stack of shipping containers. I raced to my car, parked a mile away. I had to beat them home. I had to protect Evan's ghost. As I drove, speeding through red lights, the realization hit me like a physical blow. Evan didn't die scared. He died fighting. He walked into that alley knowing it might be the end, but he had already pulled the pin on the grenade. "Hold on, son," I whispered, gripping the wheel until my knuckles turned white. "Dad's coming. We're going to finish this together." I drifted around the corner onto my street. The SUVs weren't there yet. I had minutes. I ran inside. I didn't go for my guns. I ran straight to Evan's room. I tore open his closet. There, humming quietly behind a row of hanging shirts, was his server, a black tower of blinking lights. I hooked up my laptop. I needed to copy the program, save it, before they destroyed it. Accessing. Password required. I typed in the only thing it could be. DAD. Access granted. A video file popped up on the screen. It was Evan. He looked tired, scared, but determined. "Hey, Dad," the video Evan said. "If you're watching this, I'm gone. I'm sorry. Mom is involved with bad people. I tried to stop it, but I think she knows I know. If I disappear, this program will start taking them apart piece by piece. But it needs a final authorization key to send the evidence to the FBI. I couldn't set it to automatic. I was afraid it might hurt you somehow." He paused, looking at the camera. "You have to press the button, Dad. You have to finish the mission. I love you." I stared at the screen, tears streaming down my face. "I love you too, buddy," I choked out. Screeching tires outside. Car doors slamming. They were here. "He's in there." Harper's voice screamed from the front lawn. "Go. Get the server." I looked at the screen. "Upload to FBI?" Y/N I hit Y, uploading. 1%. It was going to take time. Too much time. I heard the front door kick in. Heavy boots on the hardwood. I grabbed my tactical shotgun from under Evan's bed. I racked a shell. "Come and get it," I whispered. I stood in the doorway of my son's room, the upload bar crawling behind me. I wasn't just a father anymore. I was the firewall, and no one was getting past me. The hallway was a funnel of death, and I was the stopper. Clear left. Clear right. Voices barked downstairs. Professional. Victor had brought his A-team this time. I glanced back at the screen. Uploading. 15%. It was too slow. They would be up those stairs in 10 seconds. I couldn't hold them off with just a shotgun for the 5 minutes the upload needed. I needed a distraction. I needed chaos. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small remote. I had rigged the house weeks ago, not just with microphones, but with contingencies. I pressed the button. Boom. The flashbang I'd hidden in the foyer chandelier detonated. A blinding white light and a thunderclap of sound shook the floorboards. Screams of confusion erupted downstairs. "My eyes! I can't see," someone yelled. I didn't wait. I moved to the top of the stairs, shoulder tight against the wall. Through the smoke, I saw 3 figures stumbling, rubbing their eyes. I fired. Boom clack. Boom clack. 2 shots. Not to kill. I needed them alive to talk, or at least to be arrested. I aimed for legs. 2 men went down, howling, grasping their shattered shins. "Pull back. Pull back." Victor's voice screamed from outside. He wasn't stupid enough to come in first. I retreated into Evan's room and kicked the door shut, dragging the heavy dresser in front of it. Uploading. 32%. "Mason." Harper's voice cut through the ringing in my ears. She was outside, probably behind a car door. "Mason, stop this. Give them the server. They'll kill you. They already killed me when they took Evan." I shouted back. "This is just the paperwork." Bullets started shredding the door. Wood splinters flew like shrapnel. They were shooting blindly through the walls. I looked at the server. It was the only thing that mattered. If the drive got hit, the evidence was gone. I grabbed the tower, ripping the cords from the wall. The upload paused. Connection lost. Damn it. I had to move the data manually. I jammed a heavy-duty flash drive into the port. Copying. The door splintered. A boot kicked through the wood. I raised the shotgun. First one through gets a closed casket. I warred. The kicking stopped. Silence. Then, I heard a sound that chilled my blood. The whoosh of a gas canister. Smoke grenades. They were going to flush me out. Thick, gray smoke began to curl under the door. Acrid. Choking. I grabbed the flash drive. Copy complete. I shoved it into my pocket. I grabbed a jagged piece of mirror from the dresser and slid it under the door gap to check the hallway. 2 men were preparing to breach, wearing gas masks. I had no mask. I grabbed one of Evan's old hoodies, soaked it in the fish tank water, and tied it around my face. I couldn't go out the door. I turned to the window. We were on the 2nd floor. Below was the concrete patio. I smashed the glass with the butt of the shotgun. "He's at the window," someone shouted from the lawn. Gunfire erupted from below, shattering the remaining glass. I hit the floor, crawling. I was trapped. Hallway full of killers. Yard full of shooters. But I had one card left to play. The one I hoped I'd never have to use. I pulled out my phone. I dialed a number I hadn't called in 10 years. Bravo 6. A gruff voice answered instantly. "No hello. Just readiness." "Code black," I said, coughing in the smoke. "My location. Hostiles in the open. I am cornered." "ETA 3 minutes, Commander," the voice said. "Keep your head down." 3 minutes. An eternity. The bedroom door crashed open. A man in a gas mask stepped in, rifle raised. I didn't shoot. I was out of ammo. I threw the heavy server tower at him. It hit him in the chest, knocking him backward into the hallway. I dove after him, tackling him. We rolled on the floor, struggling for his rifle. He was strong, younger than me, but he fought with anger. I fought with desperation. I jammed my thumb into the pressure point under his jaw. He gagged, his grip loosening. I ripped the mask off his face and headbutted him. He went limp. I stood up, gasping for air, eyes burning. "Mason." I turned. Harper was standing at the top of the stairs. She looked wild, her hair matted, a pistol in her shaking hand. She was aiming at me. "Give me the drive," she sobbed. "Please. I can't go to prison, Mason. I can't." I looked at her. My wife. The mother of my child. Holding a gun to my chest to save her own skin. "You're not going to prison, Harper," I said softly. Her face softened with hope. "I'm not." "No," I said, hearing the distant thwop 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 of rotors approaching. "You're going to hell. Prison is just the waiting room." Suddenly, high-intensity spotlights flooded the house from above. The roar of a helicopter shook the roof. "This is the FBI," a voice boomed from the sky. "Drop your weapons." My students hadn't just come alone. They brought the cavalry. Harper looked up, terrified. The gun dropped from her hand. I kicked it away. "It's over," I said. Downstairs, chaos erupted as flashbangs deployed again, this time from the professionals. I heard Victor shouting orders, then the sounds of men being slammed against walls. I walked past Harper. I didn't touch her. I didn't look back. I walked down the stairs, stepping over the men I had shot, and walked out the front door. The lawn was a sea of tactical gear and flashing lights. Victor was on his knees in the grass, handcuffed, blood streaming from his nose. Grant was weeping beside him. A tall man in tactical gear walked up to me. He removed his helmet. It was Jackson, one of the men I trained a decade ago. Now a team leader. "Commander," he nodded. "You cut it close." "Traffic was bad," I said, my voice raspy. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the flash drive. I handed it to him. "This is everything," I said. "The laundering, the payoffs, and the murder of Evan. It's all there." Jackson took it like it was a holy relic. "We'll take it from here, sir." I watched as they led Harper out of the house in handcuffs. She was screaming my name, begging me to tell them it was a mistake. I turned my back on her. I looked up at the sky. The smoke was clearing. The stars were coming out. "Mission accomplished, Evan," I whispered. But as the adrenaline faded, the pain hit me. Not physical pain. The emptiness. The war was over. The house was destroyed. My family was dead or gone. I was the last man standing. And it was the loneliest place on earth. The sirens faded into the distance, taking the noise of my life with them. I stood on the lawn of what used to be my home. The front door was kicked in, the windows shattered, the smell of smoke still clinging to the siding. It was a crime scene now. Yellow tape fluttered in the wind like streamers from the world's worst party. An FBI agent approached me. "Mr. Mason, we need you to come in for a statement." And, "For protection." Protection? I looked at him, wiping soot from my face. "The threat isn't handcuffs. Victor has a long reach," the agent said grimly. "Even from a cell? And the network he built. It doesn't just turn off because the boss is gone. There are fail-safes. Lieutenants." I nodded. He was right. You don't kill a hydra by cutting off one head. You have to burn the body. I spent the next 48 hours in a safe house, a bland hotel room near the airport. Jackson and his team stood guard outside. I didn't sleep. I sat with the FBI's cyber forensics team, walking them through Evan's data. The flash drive was a nuclear bomb. It didn't just implicate Victor. It had names of judges, city council members, and 3 high-ranking police captains. It showed the flow of money from the streets to offshore accounts in the Caymans. "Your son was a genius," the lead tech said, shaking his head in awe. "He built a backdoor into their encrypted chat server. He was logging everything for 6 months. He wanted to be an engineer," I said quietly. "He just wanted to build things." On the 3rd day, the news broke. I watched it on the hotel TV. "Massive corruption sweep in City Hall," the headline read. "Prominent attorney Grant Lawson and socialite Harper Mason among arrested." Seeing Harper's mugshot on the screen felt like looking at a stranger. She looked old. The makeup was gone, the expensive hair ruined. Her eyes were empty. But then, the phone in the hotel room rang. Jackson picked it up. He listened for a moment, his face tightening. He handed it to me. "It's for you." "It's him." I took the receiver. "Hello. Hello, Mason." The voice was smooth, calm. "Victor." They let me make one phone call. My lawyer insisted I call family. But I don't have family. So I called you. "Save your breath," I said. "It's over." "Is it?" Victor chuckled. "You think a flash drive stops the machine? My money is already moved. My lawyers will tie this up in court for 10 years. I'll be out on bail by dinner." "No judge will grant you bail," I said. "Judge Harrison will," Victor said. "Because I own his daughter's student loans, and his beach house, and his shameful little gambling debt." My hand tightened on the phone. "And as for you," Victor continued, his voice dropping an octave, "you embarrassed me. You broke my things. When I get out, I'm not coming for you. That would be too quick. I'm going to find where you buried that boy of yours. And I'm going to put a parking lot over him." The line clicked dead. I stood there, the dial tone buzzing in my ear. He wasn't scared. He was arrogant. He believed the system he bought would save him. And he might be right. I looked at Jackson. "Is Judge Harrison presiding over the bail hearing?" Jackson checked his tablet. "Yeah. Arraignment is in 2 hours. Harrison is the on-call judge. He's going to let him walk," I said. "We can't stop a judge, Mason," Jackson said. "That's the law." "Then the law is broken," I said. I grabbed my jacket. "I need a car." "Where are you going?" Jackson stepped in front of me. "You can't go to the courthouse. Victor's men will be everywhere." "I'm not going to the courthouse," I said, my eyes cold. "I'm going to the bank." I didn't mean a financial bank. I drove to the one place Victor thought was safe. The one place Evan hadn't been able to hack because it wasn't online. The counting house. Victor kept his physical reserves, cash, gold, bearer bonds, in a reinforced basement under a laundromat in the old district. It was his get-out-of-jail fund. If he made bail, he would head straight there, grab the cash, and vanish. I had to get there first. I parked down the street. It was midday, the laundromat bustling with people washing clothes. I walked around the back. 2 guards stood by the metal door. They looked bored. I didn't have weapons. The FBI had taken everything. But I had the environment. I grabbed a discarded glass bottle from a dumpster. I threw it against the far brick wall. Smash. One guard went to investigate. I moved on the second one. I stepped out of the shadows, moving fast. Before he could reach for his gun, I drove my knee into his solar plexus. He folded. I chopped the back of his neck. He went down silent. I dragged him behind a dumpster and took his pistol. The second guard came back, confused. Mikey's taking a nap, I said, stepping out with the gun raised. Drop it. He dropped his weapon, hands up. He was just a kid, maybe 20. Open the door, I ordered. He punched in the code. The heavy door hissed open. Go, I said, jerking my head toward the street. Run. And don't stop. He ran. I went inside. It was a small room, stacked floor to ceiling with vacuum-sealed bricks of cash. Millions. This was Victor's power. This was his freedom. I found a jerry can of gasoline in the corner. They kept it for the backup generator. I started pouring. Over the stacks of hundreds. Over the gold bars. Over the bonds. The fumes filled the small room, dizzying and sharp. I took a lighter from my pocket. My phone buzzed. A text from Jackson. Bail granted. He's walking out. He's heading your way. I smiled. Let him come. I flicked the lighter. The flame caught instantly. A whoosh of heat slammed into me. I backed out of the room, closing the heavy steel door, but leaving it unlocked. I went back to the alley and waited on a fire escape across the street. 10 minutes later, a black limousine screeched into the alley. Victor jumped out, still in his court suit, looking triumphant. He ran to the door. He punched the code. He threw the door open. He expected to see his salvation. Instead, the influx of oxygen fed the fire. A massive fireball erupted from the doorway, knocking Victor flat on his back. He screamed, scrambling backward on the asphalt, his eyebrows singed, staring into the inferno. His money, his escape, his power. It was all turning to ash. I watched from above. Burn, I whispered. Victor sat on the dirty ground, watching his empire disintegrate. He looked small. He looked broke. Sirens wailed in the distance. Not for him. For the fire. He couldn't run now. He had no resources. No bribes left to pay. I climbed down the fire escape. I walked up the alley, the heat of the fire pressing against my back. Victor looked up. He saw me. His eyes widened in disbelief. You, he rasped. You forgot one thing, Victor, I said, standing over him. You can buy a judge. You can buy a lawyer. But you can't buy fire. I didn't touch him. I didn't have to. The police cars swarmed the alley. This time, they weren't his payroll officers. They were the feds. They dragged a weeping, broken Victor away from the flames. I stood there until the fire department arrived. The smoke rose into the sky, black and thick. It was done. The money was gone. The network was severed. Now, only one thing remained. The final goodbye. With Victor in federal custody and his escape fund nothing but ash, the legal system finally started to work the way it was supposed to. No more bribes. No more lost evidence. The Fed case was airtight. But I wasn't done. There was one loose end that gnawed at me. One confrontation I had avoided because it hurt too much. Harper. She was being held at the county detention center, denied bail because she was considered a flight risk. The FBI had frozen our assets, but her lawyer, a public defender now, had requested a meeting. She claimed she had information about where Victor had hidden a secondary digital ledger. The feds wanted me to go. They said she would only talk to me. I walked into the visitation room on a Thursday morning. It was cold, smelling of bleach and despair. I sat on the metal stool on one side of the thick glass partition. The door on the other side buzzed open. Harper shuffled in. She wore an orange jumpsuit that was 2 sizes too big. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She looked frail. She sat down, not meeting my eyes. She picked up the phone receiver. I picked up mine. Mason, she whispered. Her voice was cracked. They said you have information, I said flatly. Where is the ledger? She looked up then. Her eyes were wet. There is no ledger, Mason. I needed to see you. I want to hang up. Wait, she cried, slamming her hand against the glass. Please, don't go. I paused, the receiver hovering an inch from the cradle. Slowly, I brought it back to my ear. You have 2 minutes. I didn't want him dead, she sobbed, the tears finally spilling over. You have to believe me. Victor promised. He promised they would just scare him. Just roughed him up a little so he'd stay quiet. I thought I was saving us, Mason. I thought I was protecting our future. Our future? I asked, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. You sold our son for a beach house in France, Harper. Don't talk to me about saving us. I was scared, she pleaded. Victor threatened me. He said if I didn't help him with the accounts, he'd kill you. I did it for you. I stared at her. For 20 years, I thought I knew this woman. I thought she was my partner. But I was looking at a stranger who had convinced herself that her greed was actually nobility. You're lying, I said softly. I heard the tapes, Harper. I heard you with Grant. You weren't scared. You were laughing. You were planning how to spend the insurance money while Evan was still in the morgue. Her face fell. The mask of the victim slipped, revealing the cold, selfish calculation underneath. So what? She spat, her voice suddenly hard. What was I supposed to do? Live on your pension? Watch you get old and boring while I rotted in the suburbs? Evan was stupid, Mason. He was going to ruin everything over some moral high ground. He was just like you. I recoiled as if she'd slapped me. He was better than me, I said. And he was infinitely better than you. I'm your wife, she screamed, standing up. The guard behind her stepped forward. You owe me. You can't let me rot in here. Tell them I was coerced. Tell them I was forced. You made your choice, I said, standing up. You chose the money over your blood. Now you have neither. Mason, she shrieked as the guard grabbed her arm. Mason, look at me. I'm the only family you have left. I looked at her. Really looked at her. No, I said. My family is buried in Greenridge Cemetery. You're just the woman who put him there. I hung up the phone. I walked out of the room. I could hear her screaming my name through the heavy steel door, a muffled, desperate sound that faded with every step I took down the corridor. I walked out into the sunlight. I took a deep breath. The air tasted clean. My phone buzzed. It was Jackson. Commander, he said. We found something else in Victor's burnout safe. The fire destroyed the cash, but there was a fireproof box in the floor. We cracked it. What's in it? I asked. Tapes, Jackson said. Old school cassette tapes. Victor recorded everything. Every meeting. Every bribe. Including the meeting where he ordered the hit on Evan. Is Harper on them? I asked. Yeah, Jackson said quietly. She's on there. She's negotiating the price. I closed my eyes. It was the final nail. Give it to the DA, I said. Bury them. Done, Jackson said. Also, there's something for you. A letter. Addressed to Dad. It was in the box. Victor must have taken it off Evan's body. My heart stopped. I'm coming, I said. I drove to the FBI field office like a man possessed. Jackson met me in the lobby. He handed me a plastic evidence bag. Inside was a crumpled piece of notebook paper, stained with a single drop of dried blood. I took it with shaking hands. I sat on a bench and opened it. Dad, if you're reading this, I messed up. I tried to handle this myself. I didn't want to drag you back into the war. You worked so hard to leave that life behind. But if I don't make it home, don't be sad. Don't let Mom make you bitter. I know who she is. I forgive her, even if she doesn't deserve it. Because hate is heavy, Dad. And you've carried enough weight for one lifetime. Take care of yourself. Go fishing. Fix the old Mustang. Be happy. Love, Evan. I sat there in the middle of the busy FBI lobby, clutching the paper to my chest, and I wept. Not the angry tears of the last few weeks, but the deep, cleansing tears of grief. Evan had forgiven her. He had died trying to protect me from the truth. He was a better man at 19 than I would ever be. I folded the letter and put it in my pocket, right next to my heart. You okay, Commander? Jackson asked, putting a hand on my shoulder. I wiped my face. I stood up. I will be, I said. Eventually, the war was over. The enemy was defeated. But the hardest part was just beginning. Living. I didn't go fishing. And I didn't fix the Mustang. Not yet. There was one more person who needed to answer for what happened. Not a criminal. Not a conspirator. But the man who had the power to stop it all and look the other way. Police Chief Reynolds. His name had been all over the files Evan hacked. He wasn't on the payroll directly, but he was the one who signed off on the robbery gone wrong report. He was the one who pulled the patrol cars away from the warehouse district the night Evan was killed. He hadn't been arrested yet. He was too insulated, too politically connected. The feds were building a case, but it would take months. He was still sitting in his office, wearing his badge, pretending to be a guardian of the city. I couldn't let him sit comfortably while I waited for the gears of justice to grind. I requested a meeting, not as a vigilante, but as a concerned citizen with new evidence. I walked into the precinct at 9 a.m. on Monday. The desk sergeant buzzed me through. Reynolds' office was on the top floor, with a view of the skyline. He was a big man, balding, with a face that looked like it had been eroded by years of compromise. "Mr. Mason," he said, not standing up. "I understand you've been working with the FBI. Good work." "Cut the crap, Reynolds," I said, closing the door behind me. I didn't sit down. He sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Look, Mason, I know you're angry, but you have to understand how this city works. Victor was a necessary evil. He kept the street gangs in check. If I took him down, chaos would have erupted. So you let him kill my son to keep the peace?" I asked, my voice low. "I didn't know about the boy until it was too late," Reynolds said, looking away. "By the time the report hit my desk, it was done. Making a fuss would have just complicated things." "Complicated things," I repeated. "That's what you call a 19-year-old kid bleeding out in an alley? A complication?" I reached into my pocket. Reynolds flinched, his hand moving toward his drawer where I knew he kept a service weapon. I pulled out a small digital recorder. I placed it on his desk. "What is this?" he asked. "It's a copy of the tape from Victor's safe," I said. "The one where you called him 10 minutes after the shooting. The one where you said, 'Clean it up, Victor. I'll handle the paperwork.'" Reynolds' face went gray. That's inadmissible. It was obtained illegally." "Maybe in court," I said. "But the press won't care about admissibility. And neither will the Internal Affairs Review Board." I leaned over the desk. "You have two choices, Chief. You can wait for the FBI to come for you with handcuffs and cameras. Or you can resign. Today. Right now." He stared at the recorder. Sweat beaded on his forehead. "If I resign," he croaked, "I lose my pension." "You lost your pension when you sold your badge?" I said, cold. "You have 1 hour. If I don't see a press release by 10 a.m., this recording goes to every news station in the state." I turned and walked to the door. "Mason," he called out. I stopped, hand on the knob. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I really am." I looked back at him. A small, scared man in a big chair. "Sorry doesn't bring him back," I said. I walked out. I sat in my car outside the station, watching the clock. 9:45 a.m. Nothing. 9:50 a.m. Nothing. 9:55 a.m. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Breaking. Police Chief Reynolds announces immediate retirement citing health reasons. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. He was gone. The last pillar of the corrupt temple had fallen. I started the car. I drove out of the city. I drove past the warehouses, past the courthouse, past the jail where Harper was rotting. I drove until the concrete turned to asphalt, and the asphalt turned to gravel. I pulled into Greenridge Cemetery. It was a beautiful day. The sun was shining, birds were singing. It felt wrong. The world should be gray. It should be morning. I walked to the plot. The headstone had finally been installed. Evan Mason, beloved son. 1985 to 2004. I stood there for a long time. I didn't say anything. I just listened to the wind in the trees. "I did it, buddy," I finally whispered. "They're all gone. Victor, Harper, the chief. They can't hurt anyone else." I knelt down and touched the cold stone. But it doesn't fix it, does it? I said, my voice cracking. The house is empty. The silence is loud. I pulled the letter from my pocket. I read it again. Hate is heavy, Dad. I looked at my hands. They were scarred, calloused. Hands that had built things, and hands that had destroyed things. I took the burner phone, the one I had used to start this whole war, and placed it on the grave. No more wars, I said. I promise. I stood up. I saw a car pull up in the distance. Jackson got out. He stood by the gate, respectful, giving me space. I walked over to him. You good? He asked. I'm done, I said. I'm retiring. For real this time. What will you do? Jackson asked. I looked back at the grave. I'm going to rebuild, I said. Not the house, but something. Maybe a center for kids. Kids like Evan who want to build things. A scholarship fund. Something that lasts longer than revenge. Jackson smiled. That sounds like a good mission, Commander. It's not a mission, I said, opening my car door. It's a legacy. I got in and drove away. I didn't look back at the city. I looked forward to the open road, and for the first time in a long time, the road didn't look dark. It looked like a beginning. 3 months later, I sat on a wooden bench overlooking the lake. The air was crisp, smelling of pine and damp earth. This wasn't the city. This was a quiet town 3 states over, a place where people didn't lock their doors and the police waved when you drove by. I held a fishing rod in my hand, the line disappearing into the glassy water. Mr. Mason? I turned. A young woman stood there, holding a clipboard. She looked nervous. Yes. I asked. I'm sorry to interrupt, she said. I'm from the scholarship committee, the Evan Mason Engineering Grant. We just wanted to let you know, the first recipient was selected today, a kid from the inner city. He built a solar-powered water filter for his neighborhood. I smiled. It was the first time I had genuinely smiled in what felt like a lifetime. That's good, I said. That's very good. He wanted to meet you, she said. To say thank you. I looked back at the water. Tell him he doesn't need to thank me. Tell him to just build something that matters. She nodded and walked away. I reeled in the line. The hook was empty. It didn't matter. I wasn't here for the fish. I was here for the peace. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I almost ignored it. I had changed my number, cut ties with the old life. Only one person had this number. It was Jackson. Verdict is in, the text read. Life without parole for Victor. 25 years for Harper. It's over, Commander. I stared at the screen. 25 years. Harper would be an old woman when she got out. She would have nothing. No money. No family. Just the memory of the son she betrayed. I thought I would feel triumph. I thought I would feel a surge of victory. But I just felt light. The weight I had been carrying, the anger, the need for blood, it simply evaporated. It rose off my shoulders like mist off the lake. I put the phone away. I stood up and picked up my tackle box. I walked back to my truck, an old, beat-up Ford, not the sleek sedan I used to drive. In the bed of the truck was a toolbox, not filled with surveillance gear or weapons, but with hammers, wrenches, saws. I drove to the edge of town, to a small community center that had seen better days. A group of teenagers were standing outside, looking at a broken generator. I pulled up and got out. Need a hand? I asked. One of the kids, a boy with messy hair and grease on his face, looked at me. You know how to fix this stuff, old man? I chuckled. I know a thing or two. I opened my toolbox. I wasn't the commander anymore. I wasn't the grieving father hunting monsters in the dark. I was just Mason, a mechanic, a teacher, a man trying to make the world a little less broken than he found it. As I leaned over the generator, showing the boy how to reconnect the fuel line, I felt a warmth on my back. The sun. It wasn't a happy ending. You don't get happy endings when you lose a child. But it was a good ending. It was a life built on memory, not revenge. And for the first time, the ghost of my son wasn't haunting me. He was standing right there beside me, handing me a wrench, whispering in the wind. Good job, Dad. The end. Wait, don't click away just yet. I have a question for you that I really want you to think about. If you were Mason, standing in that burning room with Victor's money, would you have burned it all to ash like he did? Or would you have taken it to do something good? It's a hard choice, justice or opportunity. Tell me what you would have done in the comments below. And speaking of you, I see the numbers, but I don't see the faces. Where are you watching this story from? Drop your city or country in the comments. I read every single one, and it's amazing to see how far these stories travel. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, please hit that like button. It's a small click for you, but it helps me bring more of these epic tales to life. And if you haven't already, subscribe and turn on the bell. You don't want to miss the next one. One last thing, I want to write what you love. Do you want more military revenge thrillers? Or maybe more psychological family dramas? Or something totally different, like a survival story? Let me know exactly what kind of story you're craving next, and I'll write it for you. Until the next epic revenge, stay safe and watch your back.